Good morning, Mohan. Welcome to Heritage Center.
Thank you, Nance.
So we'll mainly talk about your days here at IIT when you're a student. But before we do that, just give us a little bit of a history of how you got into IIT and then what you've been doing since you left IIT.
Okay. Interestingly enough, even though my mom's first cousin, Professor V. Ramamurthy, was a faculty member in mechanical engineering, somehow I didn't know about IIT until I was about to apply for a pre-university course, and then one of my high school best buddies said, hey, you should go join Loyola College because they have this coaching for a month before the JEE for IIT. And then I'm like, what is IIT? So anyway, that's how it started out. And then of course my parents said, where do you want to go to Chennai and study there when we have set up shop in Vellore for purely the kids' education? So then finally my dad says, okay, whichever comes first, Vuris College in Vellore or Loyola in Chennai, I should take it up. And luckily for me, the Loyola College one came up. And so at that time it was just 1 month, 1 hour each day in the morning before regular classes, math, physics, chemistry being covered in these things. So that's how I wound up getting to become aware of IIT and then, get prepared in terms of the JEE. And it was like sheep mentality at the time, right? Based on what rank you got, the top choice was electronics, the next was chemicals. So my rank was such that I went into that not because of any particular interest in chemical engineering as opposed to some other branch of engineering. But then, as many people know, when I was starting my second year, 1973 is when the IBM mainframe came as a gift to IIT Madras from West Germany, and I got hooked. And the rest is kind of history in the sense of my spending all my spare time and more hanging around in the computer center. And I had the benefit of IIT letting even undergraduates who had, from a curriculum perspective, no business going anywhere near the computer, unlimited access. So, and since I left IIT in 77, of course, with all the 4 years of heavy duty learning about computers and such, I had made up my mind, especially starting from the third year, that I was going to do a PhD in computer science. But between the beginning of the second year and the third year, I thought I'll do a PhD in management science because to begin with, I was using a lot of these application packages that were available on that mainframe system. But then there was some special feature I was trying to use in a simulation package where the software kept crashing. And that's when, sitting at home in the summer of 1974, I was debugging this software. And that's when I said, the macho thing to do is to do a PhD in computer science and get into hardcore nuts and bolts, low level hardware as well as software kind of things. But I still graduated only in the software space. In terms of my PhD work, I didn't really do any hardware-oriented work. So, and after graduation, of course, from my PhD, I joined IBM Research, and I've been there ever since. 38 years of being part of the IBM Research Division, primarily in San Jose, but I did spend about 32 months in Bangalore as the IBM India Chief Scientist. And also for 1 year, I did a sabbatical in Paris at a French Computer Science Research Institute. It was from 1998 to 99.
Okay. So going back to your days at on campus, what are some of your best memories? Maybe take it year-wise. First year, what?
First year, I was more of a normal guy in the sense that when I joined Loyola College for my pre-university in 1971, that was the first time I started playing tennis, as opposed to during my high school days in Vellore playing cricket and being a member of the Vellore Cricket Club. So when I came to IIT in 72, that first year I regularly went to OAT movies, I used the tennis courts here and so on. But once the second year started and I got sucked into computer science related stuff as a side activity, it began to dominate my psyche so much that I stopped doing anything else. I didn't even hang around as much with my own batchmates, let alone others in the hostel. And also in terms of hostel, I was in Alaknanda to begin with. And I should have, as a chemical engineering guy, gone to Godavari in 70.
You had the 1+4 model.
Yeah, right, exactly. But at the time, they didn't have enough space in Godavari, so some of us got sent to Saraswati. But then from the third year onwards, I was in Godavari. So I did, spend some amount of time with my batchmates and others in the hostel, but really not the normal kind of time that others would have done, because I got to know more of the master students who were in computer science. Because when the computer center was started in 73, they started with the master's program and also the PhD program. But undergraduate degrees in computer science didn't begin anywhere in India, to my knowledge, until late 70s, early 80s. So, of course, the campus and, Mardi Gras and all those sorts of things have left a lasting impression on me. Mardi Gras, which is now called Sarang. Yeah. And also, being close enough to my parents who were living in Vellore, just 85 miles. I wound up as a Tamil guy spending my entire pre-PhD days life in Tamil Nadu, except for holidays going to some other parts of India. But also, I didn't learn Hindi in school, because by the time I would have normally had Hindi education in high school, the Tamil Nadu government went from being a Congress government to DMK, and so the 3-language formula became 2-language formula. But my mother still thought I should learn Hindi, and so I had to go to Dakshin Bharat Hindi Prachar Sabha to learn. And some of that knowledge I could have kept up while I was in IIT, if only I had hung around enough with my classmates or even others that were more into Hindi speaking, but I just didn't.
We had our own vernacular, right? We had the campus.
Oh yeah, of course, that's true too.
But I do think that the whole cosmopolitan student body is a big plus.
Yeah, definitely, no question about that. But in fact, interestingly enough, it's when I went to America, to Austin, Texas for my PhD, that I actually started feeling very bad about not having kept up my Hindi knowledge, because there, the Indian community was so small that everybody automatically assumed that everybody will know Hindi.
Right.
So, and also even movies that were being shown over there were Hindi movies with no subtitles to begin with. So I actually tried hard to revive my Hindi knowledge. But then soon after, the subtitles in English started coming, so I was less motivated then. So anyway, that's
How was your workshop experience?
Oh, that was pretty tough, right? Because at that time, in the first year, 50% of the time, every other week, we spent entirely in the workshop. And in the second year, one day of every week, we spent in the workshop. So it did, make life here very different compared to some of my contemporaries in other engineering colleges and so on, or even in other IITs for that matter. But I don't know whether in my case, it left any lasting impression in the sense of being a very hands-on guy, because even much later in life, at home and so on, my wife complains that I'm not doing enough of the things myself.
Professionals do it, that's why.
But as an engineer, I suppose I'm supposed to be expected to be more hands-on than I have wound up being.
Just supervise. The other subject a lot of people remember is, of course, drawing, engineering drawing, which also used to be pretty painful. And But you were okay with the drawing?
It's been so long that some of these things have sort of been sent out of the cache in my head, it's already 42 plus years since I graduated. 1977 is when I finished my bachelor's degree. So lot more things have come into my immediate attention, scope, and so on. So some of those memories are not as vivid, but these days, it's interesting when I look at the WhatsApp group of my classmates, some of the guys are able to recall even dorm room numbers and roll number and such things so vividly. And they're also talking about various workshop employees and so on extremely well. And so I feel bad. Is my brain so messed up compared to these other guys, at least in terms of memory?
Just make up names.
No, but then there are these other guys who are also, at times pointing out some errors in this recollection and so on. So it's quite amazing how some people have such selective memory about some of these sorts of things. And in my case, that's not the situation. So,
any memories about the department?
Chemical engineering, all I remember is, Anand teaching thermodynamics, and of course later on, long after I left, he became the director. And then, I'm forgetting, Gopinath was there. Was there a Govindarajalu?
I don't remember.
No. See, again, in my case, I'm a bad example, right? Because I was essentially trying to get away with the minimal amount of work in chemical engineering. So much so that my parents, when they noticed how much time I was spending in the computer center, and even my name, C. Mohan, was interpreted as Computer Mohan, my parents thought that I might even flunk my chemical engineering with all the enthusiasm I was showing on computer science. So in that sense, I don't have as much of an attachment to the department in the sense of after I left, coming back and interacting with the staff members. But there was one chemical engineering professor who had become a computer science person, and that was Professor Nagarajan, your namesake. But he was an older gentleman, of course. So he was one of the few faculty members in computer science after the computer came here, the mainframe, that encouraged my craziness of spending so much time on something that wasn't supposed to be my focus at IIT. The major one being, of course, Professor C.R. Muthukrishnan, who was one of the two faculty members who came from IIT Kanpur to start the computer center, and the other one being Professor Mahabala. So Muthu was ultimately my project advisor even for my BTech project. So even that project I didn't do in chemical engineering. So in so many ways I was the oddball guy that was nominally a chemical engineering student, but in fact...
Did you get into trouble in the department because of that?
No, actually, strangely enough, they even permitted me to do this BTech project in computer science. So in that sense, I got lucky. And so in many ways, I used to feel originally that unlike the IIT Kanpur administration, based on the fact that Kanpur was started with US assistance, gave the students a lot more flexibility. So the only thing I could have done in a formal sense in IIT Madras as an undergraduate student in the area of computer science was in the 8th or the 9th semester, as a mathematics option, I could have taken Fortran programming as a course. And that would have been the only formal grade qualifying entry I would have had in my mark sheet. But then, since I had started programming in the 3rd semester, this didn't make sense.
Things are very different now, as I'm sure you know. There's so much flexibility now. Chemical engineering student can get a BTech in chemical engineering and an MTech in data science, integrated 5-year program. Or you can do a BTech in chemical engineering with a minor in computer science. So there's just large number of ways in which.
So we didn't have a notion of minor at all, right? During even in your time, you are what 3 years,
81, yeah.
4 years junior
Yeah.
to me, right? So yeah, definitely. I mean, it's just that I was here at a time when I suppose because of the West German idea of what undergraduates should do, it was a more strict kind of way of deciding who gets to do what. But at the same time, I was also extremely pleased that not only the computer center administration, but even the rest of the admin people in IIT Madras allowed somebody like me to have unlimited access to the mainframe. And so to that extent, I am forever grateful to the people in IIT Madras that let guys like me exist and not get penalized in any sense. In fact, I was quite surprised when I finally managed to get out with a 7.5 GPA. Is that the term, or CPA?
CGPA.
Now I think it was originally credit point average. Yeah. And that was just barely making it in first class. 7.5 was the minimum you had to get a first class, and so I was okay with that. Although, you know, lots of other people obviously got much higher CPAs than what I got. But the saving grace for me was once I started doing computer science, I managed to get out with I think 3.95 out of 4. The only one course where I got the B dragged me down to a non 4.2 grade point average. So, yeah, that's about it.
What is the food like? I mean, what's your memories of the
Food, I don't recall a whole lot. I mean, again, I suppose I wasn't that much hung up about food and such. I mean, I was a vegetarian and I'm still a vegetarian, so I was okay with it. I mean, even now I'm not so particular about what I eat and such. As long as it fills my stomach, I'm more or less okay. There aren't too many things that I say I just can't. I won't eat because I don't like the taste or whatever. More and more, of course, you know, certain things I'm avoiding just because it doesn't seem to suit me physiologically. But other than that, life in IIT, I mean, I got so crazy at one point that I even avoided going to the OIT movies, thinking I should spend even that time learning more about some computer science geeky things.
Do you have any regrets about your time at IIT Madras?
Not really. The only thing I could presumably have done better is, as I was saying earlier, kept up my Hindi knowledge and gotten to know a bit more about people that came from other parts of India to learn more about their states and their culture and so on. Interestingly enough, it was for the first time in Austin, the first summer over there, summer of 78, that some of the Gujarati women there dragged me onto the stage to perform in Ras and Bhangra and such things. And I had never been on stage in my time at IIT, and even in high school, the school I went to was not one of those sorts of all-round kinds of schools in Vellore, the Krishnaswamy Mudaliar High School. So it was more academic focus that was dinned into me. So in that sense, you know, even my roommate in Austin for a couple of years was a Maharashtrian guy. So my, if you like, appreciation for other parts of India expanded during my time in the US than while I was here, even though, as I was saying at the beginning, I did spend summer vacations in Baroda and Calcutta and places like that, but I didn't really spend too much time on the cultural side and artistic side and things like that. So in that sense, I didn't have, if you like, kind of more all-round kind of appreciation for non-technical.
You were a computer nerd.
Yeah, especially during IIT days. But even before, you know, it's not like I tried to pursue, I don't know, Carnatic music or Western music or any of those sorts of things. But Later, of course, more because of my wife, my kids wound up getting all sorts of stuff forced on them to begin with at least, and then of course they started liking it, and so they went quite a bit into the arts compared to my own upbringing and so on.
So as an ex-IBMer, I have to ask you this.
Sure.
What parallels do you see between IIT Madras and IBM as an organization? Do you see any?
Interesting. I had not thought about...
I mean, I don't know, maybe from a leadership viewpoint or from...
See, of course, the difference is one is a commercial organization in the case of IBM, and of course, since in my case at least, I've been all my life in the IBM research division, in many ways, that's like being in academia. And of course, you are a great example of a person who has spanned both sides. In my case, in a formal sense, I've not been a faculty member anywhere, although for the last 3 years and continuing into the next 3 years, I have this position as a distinguished visiting professor at one of China's preeminent universities, namely Tsinghua University. So in terms of IIT, of course, the great thing that has happened long after I left is the establishment of the IITM Research Park and the increased focus in faculty members also getting involved in trying to get some of their research output getting commercialized and so on. So in such ways, you could say that there is more similarity now between, let's say, IIT Madras and IBM research people. Because as research people, we have had to also have our challenge, we have had to face the challenge of doing technology transfer of the research ideas into IBM products. So in some ways, that's like academics who are doing research work, trying to make their ideas see the light of day. And so now there is more such similarity, if you like, between IBM and IIT Madras. I don't know if you have some other kinds of things in mind.
No, I think, no, I just think they're both top-class organizations.
Oh yeah, of course, that's definitely the case. Independent of whether it's academic focus or a product kind of focus or trying to move the state of the art in a dramatic way in certain dimensions and so on.
So, of course, you received your Distinguished Alumnus Award a few years ago.
2003.
2003.
Yeah.
What was your, reaction when you first learned that you were receiving the award, and then when you actually received the award, what are your memories?
I was quite pleased, obviously. It's like nice to hear from your alma mater that they think you've done something, worthy of that kind of honor being bestowed on you. But I was unsure whether the nominal department that I was attached to, namely chemical engineering, would feel excited about this or not, because I didn't really continue that area of work or study and so on after I left the campus. But then again, I thought computer science people might not feel they have any special attachment to you, especially because by that time, I think, if my memory serves me right, both Mahabala and Muthukrishnan were no longer regular faculty members here. Muthu might have been still an adjunct faculty member, I'm not sure. And I didn't know too many of the other people that had, long after I left, gotten into computer science. So if my memory serves me right, actually somebody from chemical engineering came and handed me the...
Yeah, there's a tradition that the head of the department from which you graduated has to read your citation and stuff.
Right.
Yeah.
So it was nice. Of course, I would have been even happier had that award come the previous year, because for the first time we had our reunion. That was my silver reunion, 2002. So it didn't happen that year, even though the application had been put in by some colleague of mine. So that would have been nice, because then, because at that time, unlike now, I think, the awards used to be given out during these sorts of reunions in December. So I was thinking, wow, wouldn't it have been nice if, it was done with about 85 or so of the 250 graduates of 77.
Yeah, we still announce the awards at the reunion, but the actual giving of the award is in April in Institute.
Yeah, so, but of course, because there are a lot of my classmates who are still in Chennai, who never even left Chennai in terms of once they started working and so on, moving somewhere else. So quite a good number of my classmates did attend the award function. And so it was thrilling, and my parents also were there, and even my sister came and so on. So, but my family was not here, meaning my immediate family. But they were with me when we had the silver reunion. So that's the only time, in fact, both my kids and my wife attended the reunions, because they didn't come for the subsequent 30th, 35th, so on reunions. And I myself didn't attend after the 30th reunion, the 35th and the 40th ones. But we are going to have a cruise come end of March. In the US, a whole bunch of people are coming for that. So I'm looking forward to that too.
And how about the IBM Fellowship? I mean, how was that?
So that was very nice. That happened in 1997. So just about 15 years after I joined the company is when that happened. And that was quite a thrilling thing for me to see that kind of recognition coming, especially because while it's not a record in terms of the number of years after one joins the company to get the IBM Fellowship, it's less than the average number of years. So in that sense, I really felt extremely happy about that, especially since for an IBMer who has chosen, even to this day, to be a non-manager, this is like the pinnacle of technical career in IBM, to get the IBM Fellowship. So, and I also had more or less stuck to the same area of work instead of moving, even as a technical person, to dramatically different areas, as some people do. And so for me, that award and the year before, the ACM Sigmod Innovation Award, which is given for database people, were really, extremely pleasing kinds of recognition to be offered by the community of database people across the globe. In the case of the 1996 ACM Sigmod Award, in 97 by IBM people, the Ibm Fellowship.
So going back to your student days, did you have any run-ins with the administration? Did you ever get to meet the directors?
I don't think I had any slaps on my wrist by administration because of any bad behavior or anything. I might have actually met the deputy director. Professor Sampath used to be the deputy director. And he had, of course, a electrical engineering kind of background, having got his master's at Stanford. But in terms of both Professor Ramachandran, who was the director when I joined, and a few years later when Professor Pandalai took over, I'm not sure if I even met them once, each one. At least I don't recall now, although I used to be extremely active in terms of not just campus kinds of activities. I was the secretary of the computer club in my 4th year and the president of the computer club in the 5th year. And I used to interact with even people outside of IIT that were big name people in the computer science area, people that were considered like pioneers. Professor Colonel Nagarajan, whose 2 kids were juniors of mine here, and who also subsequently came to UT Austin to do their PhDs. And also Professor Narasimhan, who ran the computer group in TIFR, and later when this National Center for Software and Computer Technologies was formed, it was called NCSDCT. And then there was Major General Balasubramaniam. These three people were, even though they were not by training computer science people, they were amongst a small number of people who had gotten into the computer field in India early on. And so I was in that sense very active, even though I wasn't in a formal sense a computer science person. And so in that sense, I did, network a lot and things like that, which all helped me later on and also made me feel in many ways attached to India. Even though IBM as a company had left India in 1978, at the same time that Coca-Cola left, and IBM didn't come back to India until 1992, and even then it came back as a joint venture with the Tatas. But even during the 78 to 92 period, almost on every trip I made to India, I tried to go give talks, both at universities as well as in various commercial establishments. And so I kept up my contacts with the computer community, in particular in India, during my entire professional career. And of course, it all became even more serious when in June 2006, I came to India as the IBM India Chief Scientist, a position they created which didn't exist before. And initially it was supposed to be for 24 months, but then they extended it for 8 more months. So until January 2009, I was based in Bangalore, and I took it upon myself during that period to not only go around colleges, big ones, but even small ones, and also to go to other companies and talk about long-term technical careers and how they are important for us to move beyond doing mundane work to, move up the food chain and do more innovative work and things like that, and establish the notion of a technical ladder and not make everybody think if they don't become managers, they haven't made it in life.
So in your graduating class, how many went abroad for higher studies? What percent?
My recollection is that out of the 250 or so, out of which, strangely enough, there were only 3 women, maybe about 1/4 went abroad. Later on, of course, even some of the other people showed up. But of course, that has changed dramatically from what I gather. Less than 10%. Yeah, so that's a good thing. But then the concern I had was, and I used to talk about this, can India become an innovation superpower? Because this idea of giving such a presentation came up because the UC Santa Cruz people had a South Asian kind of program, and they were asking people to come and talk about India-related topics, and this happened during my India tenure in Bangalore. So my point was, even if the brain drain is not happening, does that mean that these people that would have otherwise gone abroad, are they still pursuing an academic career in terms of at least getting degrees like masters and PhD, or are they just merely going into the professional career path, or as it used to happen even during my time, a good percentage of these people go in for MBAs at IIMs, and then they no longer even work as technical people. They become management material. So I felt that it probably was a problem for both the foreign countries that used to benefit from Indians going abroad, as well as India, because people just had these easy to get jobs, especially when IT became so dominant in the Indian scene. Even non-computer science background people were able to get IT jobs. I felt that in some sense it didn't help anybody, that not enough of the people were pursuing higher studies and doing research. I don't know what your...
I think there's a fine balance you have to strike somewhere. I think maybe right now it's too low.
Yeah.
But was there like a scientific process for selecting universities? I remember this apping was a very, very systematic exercise. The students used to get together and divide up the universities.
No. So in my time, there wasn't this notion of people going and writing GRE and coming back and recalling what the questions were and then preparing this, this binder kind of thing. I didn't even know that that was being done after I left. I don't know after how long after I left, and that this had become like a way in which a lot of the people here prepared for.
Actually, what I'm talking about is selection of the university.
No, I understand. So this particular thing I didn't know about, but I also found out, unlike in my time, that subsequently there was this attempt to divvy up who applies to which university. To my knowledge, in my time, there was no such thing. So the level of sophistication, if you like, of trying to make sure that the top rankers don't wind up applying to gazillion universities and they all give them admission, and then each one is able to go to only one university in the end, and then they, in the process, mess up the lives for the sort of the next rank kind of students. I don't think that level of sophistication was applied in my time for people to try to make it a win-win for at least a significant number of people in the upper ranks, if you like. So I was, when I later on found out about all that, I was like, wow, these guys have made it into an art form. How to...
science, not even...
But then I also, at the same time, started hearing from some of the US university people, meaning faculty members, that they had come to know about this, and so they stopped giving importance to the GRE scores of especially people from institutions like IIT Madras and maybe the other IITs also, and they started relying more and more on the reference letters from the faculty here as being more reliable indicators of how good these people are.
You mentioned that there were hardly any female students when you were here. So how did that affect you after you graduated?
Well, I don't know about after graduation, but during the time, in contrast to what the story was at IIT Madras, I used to feel very envious of the guys across the street in Guindy Engineering, where, if my memory serves me right, in all of Madras University, that was the only engineering college where women were admitted. So they had something like 50 women in their batch that came in 72, whereas we had 3 women. And so I was like, this is unfair. I don't think it affected me in any way seriously. No, but also, like I said, I got too engrossed in all this computer sciencey things, so I wasn't pursuing in any romantic way any of these women. So had I been, motivated differently, maybe I would have felt even...
So you're romancing the silicon. So.
Yeah. Not even the silicon, more software, right? Because I wasn't really a hardware kind of guy. So, yeah. So I was quite crazy in many ways like that. Even when I went, I remember one time to Baroda for my summer internship to the refinery in Baroda. I still did it as a chemical engineering guy, believe it or not. One day I went to Ahmedabad. Instead of spending the day sightseeing, I went to the library there and started looking at what they have in terms of computer science books and such. So in many ways like that, I was quite an abnormal case.
But did you have an industry tour when you were a student? Did you go?
No.
They used to have these all India...
I don't even recall such a thing being done. Did you have it? Really?
So we went to Goa and supposedly to chemical factories, which we never went near. But yeah, we went all over the place.
Okay. Somehow, I don't recall my making a conscious decision not to go on such a thing. So, but one thing that I do remember, okay, so going back to one of your earlier questions, I was in the Air Force wing of NCC, and I also, I think that might have been during my pre-university day in Loyola. What was the other thing? National Service Corps, NSC. So I took part in that too. So as part of this NCC Air Force wing in IIT, we were taken on a camp trip to Bangalore, and as part of that, I forget now how long it was, 10 days or whatever, stay in the Madras Engineering service or some such unit of the army, I think. That's where in their bunkers or whatever is where we were put up. We were given a joyride in an aircraft. So that's the only time I had ever been on an aircraft until I was flying from here to Delhi to Tehran to Paris to New York to Austin.
Wow.
On my trip out of India for the first time, and I'd never gone abroad also. So for me, all this was like totally different kind of experience. But at the same time, I should say that when I was going to Austin, all I knew in terms of even Texas as a whole was based on the movies I saw here in OAT, right? Western movies. And so I was expecting Austin to be like any other city in Texas. And it was such a pleasant surprise to go there and find that Austin is so different. Hill country, greenery, river, non-redneck kind of place, because it was primarily at the time a university town and a capital of the state.
We just spent 3 days there towards the end of December, early.
Oh, wow, nice. So in many such ways, for me, the IIT life and what it brought about in terms of my future and so on, those are extremely pleasant memories and things that I appreciate a lot, and I constantly talk about. Not just IIT, by the way. Whenever I see Germans, especially Germans who come from the western part of Germany, I don't forget to acknowledge what that country did to my career and future and so on. In particular, I remember the German Minister for Economic Cooperation. I think there's a photo of that person in the collection you have in the Heritage Center. He, in his remarks during the inauguration of the Computer Center, which happened a few months after the actual operational usage of the Computer Center started, he said not too many West German universities at that time could boast of having such a machine. Even though, when we now look back, it's crazy. This machine had 256K of memory, and it took something like 7 to 8 hours for a compilation to be done of the program. You had to punch in cards and
all Fortran, right?
Yeah. So, but the fact that West Germans, didn't give priority to all their universities before donating machines to institutions abroad is something that, at least in my life, came at the right time and made a huge difference as to what I chose to pursue as a result of my exposure, starting from my second year to that mainframe.
Right. So, should probably conclude.
Sure. Thank you. Thanks for taking the time, and thanks to Kumaran and the others for giving me this opportunity to talk about and reminisce about my past year. Thank you.
Thanks, Mohan.